welcome to SVG-TV News for Friday, April 25th, 2025. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has made significant progress in improving access to food and reducing poverty. However, despite these efforts, there is still much work to be done. This was the message from Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Cuthbert Knight, as he delivered remarks at the opening ceremony of a recently held two-day validation workshop. The event brought together stakeholders from the ministry, other government agencies, and non-governmental organizations, NGOs. The workshop, held in collaboration with the World Bank, focused on the critical task of reviewing the National Food Security Crisis Preparedness Plan.
There are always vulnerable pockets of communities and persons who can face significant food insecurity and the threat to their nutritional well-being when they are exposed to moments of crisis. I'm saying to you, we have made tremendous steps, but we still have work to be done. The crisis which can potentially threaten our food security, which can potentially threaten our ability to produce, procure food, etc., we have to address these. But it is not just about the crisis, because these crises can be compounded by other factors. And these can speak to our structural vulnerabilities as a small island developing state. There are many things which are stacked against us. So it's not only just the natural crisis that we can think about, the eruption of the volcano, a hurricane, earthquake, etc. But we have structural vulnerabilities. St. Vincent is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world, and when you compound this with the structures of the global economy, which confronts us as a small island developing state, you'll have a better understanding of what I'm saying.
Knight emphasized that the agriculture sector was among the hardest hit during recent national crisis. The sector not only suffered significant losses, but many livelihoods were also disrupted, reinforcing the need for forward planning and robust mitigation measures.
When the crisis is upon us, but for us to be able to carve a path to understand what are the triggers, what are the things that potentially can lead us into a crisis in terms of our food production and availability. You will recall the devastating and explosive eruptions of our Lasso volcano in 2021. You will note and you will see the ongoing impact of climate change in this part of the world and in St. Vincent of the Grenadines. Extreme weather patterns. And when we talk about that, you will recall Hurricane Beryl, because this is just recent, last year. You will recall as well the crisis of the global economic shock of the COVID-19 pandemic. That pandemic in particular disrupted the international food supply and the international distribution trade, to the extent that our food systems and our food production, in particularly cultural production, and our entire food systems, from the oceans to the land, was significantly strained. We're now seeing a rebounding of our agriculture, but we endured tremendous challenges because of that crisis.
PS Knight reiterated that the goal of the National Food Security Crisis Preparedness Plan is to strengthen the country's ability to manage and recover from food-related emergencies.
Again, this is why we are here. We are saying that just those two crises alone, Hurricane Beryl and the Lasso volcano eruption in 2021, and Beryl in 2024, have significantly impacted on our production, in particular fish and agricultural produce, to the extent that it impacted severely our livelihoods and led to an increased burden on our already vulnerable farmers and households. This is why we're here, to help us to have in place a plan which can help us to better prepare and respond to these crises. Having said that, I am sure you'll agree with me that it is evidently clear, colleagues, that we must strengthen our capacity not only to respond to these crises, not only that, and I'm abundantly sure you'll agree with me, but we need to be able to put ourselves in a position where we can anticipate and prepare for these crises. But we must do so in a very coordinated, proactive, and inclusive manner. The chief spoke about science. If we are talking about how we're responding to looming crises which impact our food production and our livelihood, we have to be able to do so based on informed decisions which are supported by data, which was said before. We cannot be doing so in a total way. That will not help us.
In a significant step towards enhancing food security and student well-being, the South Rivers Methodist School is now officially part of the school feeding program under the Adopt a Classroom initiative. The program falls under the umbrella of the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, the SVG-TV, and is supported by the St. Vincent Electricity Services Limited, VINLEC. The official signing ceremony for the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, was held on Thursday, April 24, 2025. The Adopt a Classroom program is a strategic initiative aimed at fostering partnerships that directly support schools in providing healthy, nutritious meals to students. With the signing of the MOU, South Rivers Methodist School joins a growing network of institutions benefiting from sustainable feeding solutions and community-based support structures. Delivering remarks at the ceremony, CEO of the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, Sophia Horn-Beek, expressed delight at bringing the school on board despite some delays in the process. She said feeding our children must be a critical part of our mission to eradicate hunger in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She noted that 18 schools across St. Vincent and the Grenadines are currently being supported under the initiative. Each school receives grants to supplement the meals provided, enabling them to purchase additional food items not included in the standard supply. Hornbeek also shared that students receive these meals free of cost, and she thanked VINLEC for its vital contribution. Additionally, Hornbeek highlighted the importance of the Eat What You Grow campaign, which is being promoted in schools to support balanced nutrition and encourage local food production. She reaffirmed the Zero Hunger Trust Fund's commitment to expanding the program to benefit even more schools in the future. Meanwhile, the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and VINLEC recently partnered with the Zero Hunger Trust Fund to conduct a series of monitoring and evaluation visits to schools benefiting from the Adopt a Classroom initiative. The visits part of ongoing efforts to access the impact and effectiveness of the Resilient School Feeding Program. It included stops at the South Rivers Methodist School, the Sandy Bay Government and Secondary Schools, and the Obia Government School. According to a news release from the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, the team engaged in meaningful discussions with teachers, students, and parents who shared positive feedback on the program's implementation and impact. The monitoring exercise also aims to ensure transparency and accountability in program delivery while refining approaches to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As part of its ongoing monitoring and evaluation activities, the Zero Hunger Trust Fund also donated essential gardening tools to the Sandy Bay Secondary School, supporting its agriculture program and food security efforts. This initiative aligns with the goal of the Eat What You Can Grow campaign, which encourages school-based agriculture, promotes sustainability, and reinforces healthy eating habits through local food production. In other local news now, we hear that Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has described the passing of Pope Francis as a sad moment for the global community, especially for the Christian faith. Speaking on the radio on Wednesday, Prime Minister Gonsalves praised the late Pontiff as a man who strengthened the church and played a significant role in uniting the Christian fraternity.
I'm pained and we all are anguished at the passing of this holy man of God. This man who, in addition to being very tolerant, a man of peace and faith, and always had a priority for the poor, the marginalized, the dispossessed. He, a gentle human being with immense humor, and strengthened the church, strengthened the Christian fraternity, and reached out in ecumenism to other Christian groups, but also to have greater understanding with Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and other religions.
The Prime Minister also reflected on the Pope's lasting impact, calling him a great moral leader whose legacy will continue to inspire generations to come.
His legacy in reminding us about personal redemption and salvation, about trying to make the world a better place and to look after the most lowly among us and to promote peace. And he was very strong on helping, pleading the cause of migrants, people who are running from war and conflict and who ended up in different places, and there's a backlash, and he is reminding persons really that we are all on this dangerous road, metaphorically, to Jericho, and we have to look out for one another in solidarity. He was the epitome of the answers posed by Micah to the question, what does the good Lord require of us? To do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. He is a great moral leader.
Pope Francis is expected to be laid to rest tomorrow, with tributes continuing to pour in from world leaders, faith communities, and millions of admirers around the globe. A separate facility is being established within the prison system here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to accommodate individuals deemed criminally insane. This announcement was made by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves during an appearance on NBC Radio earlier this week. He explained that following news of the pending release of one such individual, immediate steps were taken to ensure appropriate housing arrangements were made at the prison with separate and secure accommodation.
When I was informed by the prison authorities that when this person is coming out, due to come out, immediately put things in action, and we got a design done to, first of all, people said that because the person has a mental health problem, they already put in a mental home, as they say. The staff was understandably worried. But what we had decided to do on advice is that there was enough space that we can build a separate facility and put on all the bars and everything and so on. With cameras and real tight security and a fence within the compound. And private security firm, with at least one of them being armed at any time for the shifts which you have.
The Prime Minister noted that with the assistance of the Buildings, Roads and General Services Authority, BRAXA, the government has put measures in place to accommodate the individual in a secure setting, isolated from the general prison population.
The view of BRAXA was that by the time he was coming out on the 17th, which was the Thursday, that he was sure that the facility, everything would. I said, what are all the other things you need to take off? And he tell me. I said, out of an abundance of caution, let us declare a particular room in the prison, far away, but not to have any prison officer. Have that declared as an extension of the mental health for the purposes, but to have mental health personnel there and have the private security there and have all the arrangements made to make sure all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed to have him go back up there to go out on mental home.
The initiative highlights ongoing efforts by the government to address mental health needs within the justice system, particularly for individuals who require specialized care, while also posing a potential risk to themselves or others. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Coast Guard Service plays a vital role year-round in protecting the nation's waters and saving lives at sea. That's according to Sub-Lieutenant Alvis Daniel, who is speaking on WeFM's Cop Chat program on Wednesday. During the interview, Daniel emphasized the importance of the Coast Guard's work and urged members of the public to be more informed about maritime safety protocols.
Okay, well, emergencies, these are things that we would have trained to train and mitigate against. For example, during hurricane season, for example, we normally play a role in making the public aware or providing awareness to the public in terms of sending out broadcasts about safety information for fish folks and so forth, the do's and the don'ts, how to secure your vessels and all these kind of things. So, and those are some of the things that we would provide also during hurricane seasons. And Easter regatta is another activity that we actually we're involved in, and we provide information to the public, make sure that the persons are aware of the beach safety rules and so forth. And those are some of the things that we do.
Daniel also highlighted the importance of knowing how to report emergencies at sea. He explained that there are 3 different types of SOS signals, each used under different circumstances. And
we actually have classifications for emergencies at sea. There are 3 different types. Okay, so let me just explain them. The Mayday, as I said, is the most urgent call, distress call, where there's immediate threat to life or limb. There's a fire on board your vessel, you're taking on water, you run aground, somebody's injured, something like that. Okay. That's a Mayday call. The pan is urgent. Almost similar situation, like you probably ran out of fuel, your engine break and you're drifting, but there's no immediate danger to your life. That is a pan call. Okay. The security call now is a call that is used to disperse information regarding maritime awareness. Like you might be out at sea and there is a large gathering of seaweed, whatever, for example, as a practical example.
Big log or something.
Right, or there's some logs in the water and you want to warn other persons who are at sea. Okay. Be aware that this is here. This might be a danger to your navigation. You understand? So that would be a security call.
In addition, Sub-Lieutenant Daniel emphasized that the DHS Meta Distress Heading Situation is the preferred format for contacting the SVG Coast Guard. This method ensures that the most important information is communicated clearly and efficiently. He cautioned that relying solely on cell phones can be risky since coverage may be limited or unavailable in some maritime areas.
The preferred method, the VHF, is because with a cell phone, for example, you're just calling one person, and if you don't get that person, then It doesn't make any sense. You understand? But with a VHF now, when you send that call over the VHF radio, any station within that vicinity, within that range, maybe between 5 to 20 miles, depending on your location, would be able to hear that and relay that message or for help. But calling somebody on a cell phone is just...
The SVG Coast Guard continues to encourage all seafarers, fishermen and boat operators to familiarize themselves with maritime safety protocols and to ensure their vessels are equipped with the necessary communication tools in case of emergency. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force, the RSVG-PF, has charged Roger Johnson, a national of Grenada, for breaching the state's immigration laws. The force says, according to preliminary investigations between February 1st and February 28, 2025, Johnson unlawfully entered the state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines under the following circumstances. 1. He entered the state other than at a port of entry, contrary to the Section 10.1 of the Immigration Restriction Act, Chapter 114 of the Revised Laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 2009. 2. He entered by boat and disembarked without the consent of an immigration officer in violation of Section 10.2 of the same Act. On Wednesday, April 23, 2025, Johnson appeared before the Kingston Magistrate Court, where he pleaded guilty to both charges. For entering the state other than at a port of entry, he was fined $280 EC payable forthwith. In default of payment, he will serve 3 months at His Majesty's prison. For entering the state by boat and disembarking without the consent of an immigration officer, he was fined $220 EC payable by April 24th, 2025. Failure to pay this fine will result in a concurrent sentence of 3 months imprisonment. A removal order was also issued for his deportation from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force reminds the public that all visitors that compliance with immigration regulations is essential to the safety and sovereignty of the state. It says persons entering the country must do so through designated ports of entry and in accordance with the law.